Hello, my friend. Welcome back to the Mindset Check podcast. I'm your host, Misha McKittrick. This is a podcast where I believe that as you take time for a mindset check, you have more power than you think you do. And where we also believe that there is a lot of wisdom in keeping quiet. And that there is a lot of wisdom in speaking. We're going to jump into this today. And I'm really excited to go through this episode as it becomes one that really helps you evaluate potential spaces that you are holding inside. And this is what came up at this point in time. So hopefully it's really helpful for someone. Hopefully it's really helpful for you. All right, before we jump in, I love sharing things that I'm super into right now. And duh, I'm totally kidding. But for real, the Bieber album, if you haven't been just listening to the whole thing and just letting it go, do it. It's so great. It's fantastic. Just kind of like in the background, the first day we ever heard it, it was a few weeks ago, we went to the river and my oldest, who is a total music buff, was like asking my youngest if he had, listened to the new Bieber album yet. And I was like, why aren't you asking me? It's so good. It's so good. So there's a little tidbit for your summer, and I hope your summer is going well. My summer looks super and wildly different than summers usually look. And you know what? It's okay. It's okay. We're not traveling as much as we have in the past. My youngest and I are like starting a new business together. It's a really different summer, and there's something about it that also feels like super restorative. It just feels really like, okay, we're doing good stuff here. So no matter what your summer looks like, I hope that you're finding peace in your heart about it. I hope that you find, the way to look at it from the angles that help you find gratitude. Hey, also, before we jump into the episode, I just want to say there is some stuff coming up with heart coherence. I'm really focusing on some small groups. And if you are interested in learning heart coherence in small groups, it is going to be a little bit unheard of as far as accessibility for you. I'm trying to do that to make sure that it's reachable for all people. So if you're interested, reach out to me. Send me a DM on Instagram or send me an email. My Instagram is @myfriendmisha and my email is hello@myfriendmisha.com. Just let me know that you're interested and I'll make sure you're on a list to get some more information. All right, without further ado, let's jump into the episode. Take a moment to bring to mind a story that you have never told. A story that you've never told because it involved someone else. And the line was really hazy, right? Like you didn't feel like you could say something without jeopardizing what the other person was up against, right? But you were in it too. And so it becomes really sticky. I can remember a day when things were happening in my family. And I remember sweeping my floor, listening to podcasts around the topic of the big event, the big thing that had happened, and just really wishing that I could talk to someone who had been through it. But it would for sure expose a family member. And I was just kind of stuck. So really this whole podcast was formed around an Instagram post that really kind of stirred up some thoughts in me. And I kind of wonder initially how you'll feel about it. This is what the post said. A little reminder. You are allowed to talk about what they did to you and how it hurt you. It does not matter how they feel about you talking about it, because if they wanted people to think better of them, they should have been better. That's loaded. It's so loaded. I think I could read that in the most loving voice, and I could also read it in a pretty sassy voice. Right? But if we sit and talk about the ins and outs of this quote, like where it's right, where it isn't, or maybe where it feels like it's helpful and good and loving and, all of that versus falling into negative energy and victimhood and I'm right kind of a situation, I think we learn a lot when we just evaluate it from that space, right? It doesn't matter how they feel about you talking about it, because if they wanted people to think better of them, they should have been better. Wow. What's interesting is that we're recognizing energy as we really break this down. And a lot of people will, on the flip side, hold it in, right? And by doing that, they're not getting anywhere either. So we got some things to talk about, and a lot of times our kids go through things that are big, or even our kids can be even diagnosed with something that's big. And we can be in the quandary of, should we even tell people because it's a label, it's labeling them, right? I mean, that's not what we're setting out to talk about today. But I think that all of these personal hurdles and questions on whether or not we should share, right? Our kids' stuff, our husband's stuff, our friends' stuff that really has us up against a wall. And today we're exploring that line, the delicate line between sharing your truth and respecting others' roles in it, right? Especially when the people involved are people that we really love. We're going to talk about the why behind telling your story, when it is right and aligned to speak, and when it's wise to pause, and, all kinds of fun little details about ancient wisdom and science and so forth. I want to share with you another thing that came up for me in my life that contributes to this episode. Some of you will remember back to season 1, a long time ago, when I shared a lot about my little girl and the truth behind her passing. And I remember when that podcast, when I knew that was coming up, I was like, how am I going to share about this? I was catching my breath. It's stuff that I don't talk about lightly. And I was feeling a lot of trepidation and really weighing out, should I share fully? Because I most of the time don't. Because honestly, most people can't hold it. When they're not in the story, it's difficult for them to hold. And there's a lot of other reasons too, because there are big implications for other people that were involved. And I knew in my heart that there was a lot of good behind sharing the truth. Because if I could share this truth, people could fully understand what it meant to step into forgiveness and compassion, and to have more understanding around accidental deaths, and because I don't share these truths lightly, I'm not just exposing them here on this episode. It's fully out there in the public. But I like people to experience it when they experience the story. I could probably get a lot of followers by airing things like that on social media, right? And really using it to quote unquote my advantage. But notice what's behind that, right? So I remember when I was really, really in the middle of it, I talked to a woman who's really, really wise. Her name's Shri Pritaji. She owns an entire huge ashram retreat place, in India. She's really impressive. And I remember I was at an event and we had the opportunity to go and talk with her and just to ask personal private questions. And at the time, this was really weighing on my heart. And I remember I took this to her and I said, what do you think? Do you think I should share? And she said to me, Misha, I feel the energy of why you want to share. And that's a really good thing. And I think that whole advice could guide this entire episode. We're still going to break it down. But really, if we can get clear on our why and what is behind our sharing, what is our motivation? If we can evaluate if our desire is high vibration or low vibration, if we can really get clear on why we are not talking about it versus why we should, this is really going to help you, not only for whatever might be on your heart right now, but there might be a day when you are sweeping your kitchen in the future where you're just like, what am I supposed to do? And maybe this episode will pop into your mind and you'll go, oh yeah, let's pay attention to the motivation and get clear on the why. And then we can walk through all of these different ways of how to evaluate why we should or shouldn't share. So the first category is really addressing who would you share this with? So these are really this is where a lot of wisdom comes in. Because there actually is also a lot of wisdom in not sharing some things and safely holding the truths of others. I remember one family that I knew, I literally thought so highly of them because I knew this fact. Someone in their family, they had 9 kids, someone in their family backed out of the driveway and it caused an accidental death for one of their youngest. And the public never knew who it was. Isn't that cool? Oh, that's so cool. So sometimes there's a lot of wisdom in not sharing, okay? So it's kind of really evaluate a couple of things when you evaluate, what good would come from sharing this? And I think always when you're evaluating whether or not you should share, you really should only talk to people who you think you can trust, right? Don't go talk to Sally Joe, who's going to tell everyone in the family or everyone in the neighborhood or whatever, if it's not any news made for that. Some people have the energy of telling things to get attention, right? And if you're drawn to tell people like that, then you got to evaluate what's going on inside of you as well. It's very interesting who we might gravitate to tell. Are they going to help you? Are they going to make you feel validated or help you be like, oh yeah, you are such a victim? Are they going to help you get the help that you need? Do they have the capability, not only to guide you, but do they have the emotional stability to hold what you have to tell them? One piece of advice that I really love is if you look to people who are 5 to 10 years older than you, chances are they might have been through it or have been through it next to a friend, and that's helpful also. So just remember, a lot of times your peers are the people who are your age, their kids are the same ages as your kids and so forth. And it might be big. It might be too big for them. So if you talk to someone that's like, oh yeah, we did that. We went through that. And then all of a sudden, all of the bullets that you're sweating are like, oh my gosh. And it works out. It's okay. Because we can get all crazy inside of our head sometimes. So be really clear on the person that you tell and the reason why you are approaching that person. Seek to speak to people that you trust. And, there's also the evaluation of figuring out if you need professional help and if you need to tell someone like that. And sometimes a close friend or a confidant can help you with that as well. Also, is it someone who thinks highly of the person that you might be having the issue with, or the person that you're helping through the issue? Because that's really important too. If you're giving this person more fuel to dislike this person, that's not good, right? And so can they still see the good in the person and not write off the person? Do they have a good repertoire with this person? Does that matter? You know, you kind of have to evaluate things like that. And is this person also a person who can see that, like, not everyone is good or bad, that we all have things? And can they hold compassion in that space? Right? Sometimes people hurt other people or go through things because of their own wounds. Is it a person who knows and recognizes that? So those are some really great guiding points with, like, who to talk to, okay? And then something that I think is a really important category as well is thinking about processing, seeing, and healing, okay? Because when we don't talk, we have a tendency to not be fully aware or fully present to what actually really is going on. The moment you start to talk about it, you actually give yourself power. So I have talked with many women, clients, friends, and so forth, that have told me truths that, I don't think before us talking, they might not have even fully admitted it to themselves. Because that's how quietness is, right? Like truths like, I'm not happy in my marriage. I'm not sure I even married the right guy. My husband lies all the time. Things that are really, really big, that are about the reality of what is happening in their life. And then because they're able to actually talk about it, they end up seeing things completely different. And it's really hard for me to tell you how they see it different, because all of the situations are different. Sometimes they can see their part in the situation. Sometimes they can see that they've seen red flags all along and they didn't have the reservoir or the emotional stability or capacity to do something with it. And so they dismissed it subconsciously. So many things that come out of being able to speak just by the ability to see it. When you see it, you actually start to process it. That's the very first step in processing it, right? We have to, I love the quote. Who says that quote? Dan Siegel. He says, naming it is taming it. So the brain actually calms down when emotional experiences start to become verbalized. So it's the beginning of processing it. And maybe if that's your motivation behind sharing it, is that you know you need to process what's happening inside you, or to help you see or understand it better. There's a chance you figure out, like, you're going to be okay with it, or that you're not the only one that's experienced this in life, or you might find support and insight. Either way, fully being able to say something out loud or even writing it out is part of the healing journey. When we don't process the big things, it becomes trauma, or at least it becomes water in the cup. Remember a couple of episodes back when we talked about the amount of water in your cup is what contributes to when more water goes into your cup, whether it's trauma or not. When you're not processing it, there is standing water in your cup. And so talking about it can help you free it. It can help you see it for what it is, because not talking about it can keep you trapped in it. in wild, crazy ways. And that leads us kind of into the next section, which is to consider the patterns that are happening by being quiet. When we're quiet and we don't set it free, often there's something happening, okay? So there's a narrative that you're telling yourself. Maya Angelou said, "There's no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you." She's amazing. She wrote some really great books. Why the Caged Birds Sing. I remember I read that in college, and I worked for Delta Airlines, and I was sitting in the break room reading, and two of my friends who were much older than me came into the break room, and they were like, what are you reading? You know? And I'm like, oh, I'm reading this book. Yeah, it's for school. And they're like, you're kidding. You get to read Maya Angelou for school? You know? And it was like so adorable the way that they were so checked into loving this book. Suddenly I saw what I was reading as gold, right? Instead of like a have to, I saw it like as a want to, and it transformed the story. So that's a little side story about Maya Angelou, but I remember holding her story so closely in my heart because she went through so much stuff and literally like had no one to tell when she was going through it. So that quote coming from her, it's big. I love the parable about a monk who once carried a woman across the river. This broke the monastery rule that they weren't supposed to touch women. But he recognized a need and he helped this woman across the river. Hours later, after walking together, another monk finally asked him, "Why did you do that?" The monk who carried the woman said, "I put her down hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" Sometimes we carry what we never voice, and that's what keeps us stuck. An immense amount of suffering can happen when we try to do it alone. And so we have to drop in and say, is it actually healthy that I'm holding this? That I'm holding it potentially with no one to talk to about it? Talking to another person about it, especially if you choose well, brings a lot of insight, like incredible insight. And all of a sudden, you see everything in your life differently because of the insight that they were able to offer. And a lot of times we get stuck in those negative patterns in our head around whatever it is that we're going through. We become a victim, or we become, like it can be so yucky the way that someone else's truth can keep you trapped. But you also have to stop and evaluate that maybe the person who wouldn't want you to tell actually has you right where they want you. It could really be a form of manipulation. And so staying silent completely usually keeps the pattern of whatever you're trying to protect going. So that's really important to evaluate. And then it's important to evaluate, what are you telling yourself inside your own head about the thing, right? Because anything that you actually don't want in your life is dwelling on negativity, and it's asking that negativity to repeat over and over and over again. So there's something in your brain called the default mode network. And really it's the brain activating whenever we reflect in our mind, or whenever we narrate when we're saying something. And when our storytelling becomes stuck in loops of injustice, we strengthen those neural pathways around bitterness and victim identity and, having like that pity party inside of our head. And so it's really important to bring it forward so that we can more clearly see it. Because when we can more clearly see it, we can evaluate, what's right and wrong inside of it. Maybe we can see something completely differently, maybe somebody's perspective can help us see that there's light that we didn't see inside of it. Like we feel like we are stuck in this darker place and that there will never be change. And just by allowing somebody else to breathe into that space, you get to breathe their beliefs into your life. And it changes everything, everything. And so really evaluating, like, and it's so tricky to give advice on this because, you know, something that you're holding really close about your marital relationship might be really different than what a kid might be going through. You know what I mean? So it's hard to like kind of get in here and do this, but I'm hoping that it's still vaguely, you know, from the outside allows you to be evaluating on a personal level and that you will hear the voice that doesn't speak words and that you will hear wisdom when we're talking and when we're having this conversation. You'll hear direction for your own life on what you should do or which direction that you should choose. Whether or not we're speaking, you know, to a person and we actually are having a conversation about the issue, or whether or not we're keeping it silent, it's really important to evaluate the story that we are repeating. So we have to ask ourselves, are we using our voice to free ourselves or to relive pain? If you are reliving pain, no doubt about it, you need help. No doubt about it, you should be speaking to someone, and you should be speaking to someone who can offer light, who can offer possibility, who can offer something different at the end of your story, or else you're just going to keep reliving it over and over. You have to ask yourself, am I retelling this story to justify myself or to vent without transforming? Am I allowing myself to sit and be a victim? Am I, this one's kind of hard, but you have to ask the question, am I degrading someone else's image to make me feel better about my own? Huge props if there's any truth in that for you, because that means you're seeing it and you can change it. Am I using this story to punish someone or shame them, you know, to put them against the wall and say, you did this to me and da da da? Am I avoiding any personal responsibility inside of this? Anytime something goes really wrong in a relationship, it's always two people. And I know sometimes that feels really messed up to hear. You know, especially in situations where someone cheats. That's really hard to hear. But there is a side of the story, and we're not here to say what's bad, which one's worse or which one's not, because it might not help you to feel like your side of the story is just not as bad as what the other person did. Like, it might not help to be in that. It might help to honestly, own the parts of it that you can own, and own the parts of it that you can see, and just keep sending love into the space. And to recognize that people, right? And there's a brokenness inside of another person when things like that happen. And typically there was a lot of brokenness, maybe even before it happened, trauma that was even carried from childhood. Like, there is so much, so many layers. And to think that it's only about you, you know, or only about the two of you, or whatever situation that you're facing, it's really so much more. Telling the story in a way that helps you accept your own responsibility is what will help you to attract different things into your life. It's what's going to help you invent a new reality. Really important. And then think about this. Do you ever retell your pain so often that it becomes your identity? That's really, really big, because when people float through life as a victim, everybody on the outside is always doing things to them. And it's part of their reality. It's a way of really seeing the world. Or you could flip the pancake over and you could start to see good and you could start to have a different reality. That's why evaluating the voice that's going on inside of you is so important. Whenever the motive is to feel justified or to quote win or to recruit people to your side, the energy behind that reinforces victimhood, not healing. Just be brave enough to let that resonate inside of you and know that, like, I'm here holding space because I know these things are hard. It's hard. But the only thing that brings change is being able to see these types of stories that we run in our life, in our head, in our heart. You know, I love this quote by Dr. Robert Anthony. He says, "When you blame others, you give up your power to change." Wow. we don't need to talk about, do you need to set boundaries? Do we need to, protect you in some way? That's a whole entire different conversation. Yeah, it's a little part of this, but know that it's like tabled for a different time. Because right now we're talking about you and what you hold inside of you when it feels like it's not your story. I promise you're a player in it. If you're keeping anything, you're a player in it. My friend was telling me about her cousin that was adopted, and this whole family is like Peruvian and I think a mix of Hispanic. They've got like a lot of really beautiful toned skins in their family, and she came in, she was adopted, and turns out her skin was a lot more white than anyone else in the family. And forever, the entire family that was alive and aware at the time that she came into the family kept the secret that she was adopted. She was an adult before she figured out that she was adopted. And there were sicknesses in that family that came on a lot earlier. A lot of times when we keep secrets, it actually can turn into things like cancers. And, it's the dis-ease in your body that causes disease. That's one of the most beautiful light bulb moments, is when you actually realize that your state really does affect your health and everything. It's amazing. So to wrap up this section is to really ask yourself, what are you telling yourself or thinking about the thing that you're keeping inside of you? And if it's negative, it's a good indicator to let someone in. When you let someone in, especially if it's a good person like that has motivation on their tongue and knows how to look for good and knows how to process things and so forth, right? And not everybody's going to know all the things. But someone that can hold love and that can hold compassion is a great place to start. And it can help you be able to speak a different story, to be able to create a different narrative inside of your life. And sometimes we need outside perspective to be able to have that power. Also, when you simply have the space to tell your story out loud, it helps the brain actually make meaning from pain. And it can shift trauma loops into empowerment. I want you to know that if someone that's very close to you in your life is doing something that you feel like you need to keep secret, but it is affecting you, you are a player in that story also. And I am not giving you power to suddenly become sassy and to become a victim. I am asking you to help yourself in a very healthy and good way, because that's when you really become present to the real truth. And saying it out loud allows you to take action toward the remedy and to stop skirting your own responsibility in a situation. Remember, staying silent completely usually keeps the pattern of whatever you're trying to protect going. Usually, okay? If your parents and your kids are going through something, there's a high chance that you've been there before and there's things that you can find a lot of education about it, depending on what it is. I mean, you have everything with kids, across the board of things that you might not want to say to everyone. And that is just the truth, and it's okay. But you do need to have support in your life, and you do need to feel like you have tools and you have plenty of resources. And if you don't, then it's time to get help. It's time to reach outside of yourself. You can reach to lots of organizations, and it's an actually really beautiful thing that we have so much information at our fingertips. But sometimes that can never take the place of just a compassionate human being. Also, one thing around getting help is that if you are the person supporting another person, often you might have more ability to see more than the person that you're supporting. Like, they might be running even a bigger story inside of their head, and that blinds you to be able to see how you can get help or move through it, to understand it better, to see something, right? And so maybe you're the one if you're supporting. You know what I mean? So you just really have to kind of like sit back and really evaluate the situation and allow that voice and that intuition to drop into your heart. Another reason that you might have a desire to share a truth that involves another person is it might help other people through their story or their experience. It might help them to get help, right? It might help someone else feel less alone, and feel inspired to heal. So honestly, really just checking in with your heart and figuring out like why you want to tell someone in your life what it is that you're experiencing, or, figuring out when it is time to speak up, right? When the story or the actions of another person doesn't quite feel like it's yours. Maybe it actually is. Maybe it's more to do with you than you understand. And so a couple guiding questions to wrap up are, am I processing it, or am I preserving the pain by talking? Am I helping myself or someone else heal? Do I want to be seen, or do I want to be right? Is my motive peace, or is it permission to stay angry? Am I sharing to heal or to harm? Can the person I'm sharing this hold with grace? Also, am I owning my part in the story? And lastly, will speaking this move me toward peace and freedom? My friend, whatever is in your heart, whatever's on your heart when it comes to this subject, I'm holding compassion and space with you for that very thing, because I do know that there are a lot of silent things that people carry through life. I sat with an older woman one day who told me a whole story about how her daughter had been molested by a neighbor when she was young, and she had never told the story. Never. Like, to just a person, right? There was like a couple people on her inside. That was it. And this daughter had since grown, and we walked through so many things about her story and about what she carried and what her daughter carried and the freedom that there was still to find. And it was beautiful. So I'm sending you so much love and so much peace and so much hope, and helping you understand that you really can reinvent a different story. And man, when you are faced with the reality of a story that's really tough, please, please know I get you. Like, I get you in a lot of categories. Not all categories, but in a lot. And if you knew the silent experiences of what other people were going through, I think you would really understand you are really not alone. There's a lot of people holding things that can't be said at this point in time for one reason or another. So be wise, my friend. Just because you're telling the truth doesn't mean you're telling it with love. Always evaluate what's behind it. Always try to see your part. And I hope that ultimately that you see that when you see your part in whatever story it is, you see that you have more power than you think you do. All right, my friend, I hope that this episode brought a little bit of insight into your life. If you know someone who could really use this right now, then share it with them. Also, make sure that you are following the Mindset Check podcast so that you don't miss any future episodes. Before I leave you today, I want to share a Bible verse with you. It's actually really applicable. It's Ecclesiastes 3:7, and it says, "There is a time to keep silence and a time to speak." Until next time, my friend.